Stratford, Connecticut, Raybestos-Manhattan Corporation headquarters. Somewhere in the executive offices, there's a personal safe.
What's in it?
Under the heavy combination lock, with access limited to a handful of people, was approximately 6,000 documents.
How long had they been accumulating?
2 decades of correspondence, internal memos, meeting notes, scientific reports, all filed together under a single label.
What's the label?
Dust.
They labeled it dust.
D-U-S-T. Filed alphabetically, right there with development and distribution.
That's not subtle.
It wasn't meant to be subtle. The vault belonged to Sumner Simpson, president of Raybestos-Manhattan since its founding in 1929, and between 1933 and 1943, Simpson and his counterparts at other companies created a paper trail.
What kind of paper trail?
Letters, memos, study results, suppression strategies, all preserved using standard 1930s business practices.
Why does the medium matter? What's significant about paper documentation specifically?
Carbon copies, heavyweight bond paper, corporate letterhead, signed in ink. Because they used standard 1930s business practices, every letter made at least one duplicate. Every memo was preserved for filing. Everything a businessman was supposed to keep, they kept, including the evidence of their own conspiracy.
They thought it was all just routine business correspondence.
For 44 years, they were right. But eventually, the vault opens, and what's inside becomes evidence. This is episode 24, The Paper Trail.
Asbestos, a conspiracy 4,500 years in the making, is brought to you by Danziger and Dayano, 30 years of turning corporate records into family justice. Dandel.com. That's DANDELL.com.
Quick note before we dive in.
If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with mesothelioma or an asbestos-related disease, Danziger and Dayano offers free consultations, no upfront costs. They only get paid if you do.
1933. 11 asbestos workers file a negligence lawsuit against Johns Manville Corporation in New Jersey.
What are they claiming?
The company failed to provide adequate safety equipment, proper ventilation, working masks.
How does it resolve?
Johns Manville settles, $30,000 total.
For 11 people.
$2,700 per worker. 2 conditions. 1, the lawyer who brought the cases agrees to not file any more.
Do we know who the lawyer was?
Samuel Greenstone. We covered him in episode 20, Newark attorney. He agreed to the gag order, never directly or indirectly participate in bringing new cases against the corporation. And then, vanishes.
We still don't know what happened to him after 1933.
And Johns Manville's internal minutes from 1933 confirm the strategy.
They wrote down the strategy?
Quote, "Our past policy of keeping this matter confidential is to be pursued." Same year, 1933, Johns Manville and Raybestos-Manhattan fund a study by Dr. Lanza.
Lanza, MetLife's man, the one who struck result fatally from his own study.
The same. And in 1931, his preliminary findings showed that 87% of workers with more than 15 years of asbestos exposure had radiographic evidence of lung disease.
That's 9 out of every 10 long-term workers.
Right. So what does the industry do with this information?
I'm guessing they don't warn the workers.
Van Brown, Johns Manville's vice president, corporate secretary, writes to Lanza in late 1933, requests changes.
Changes to what, specifically?
The published version needs to minimize the danger, and it works. Lanza's original draft said, quote, "It is possible for uncomplicated asbestosis to result fatally."
And the published version?
February 1936, Journal of the American Medical Association, quote, "Asbestosis did not result in any marked disability."
4-year delay between completion and publication. Why hold it that long?
Because Johns Manville plans to use the altered study as a lobbying tool to prevent asbestosis from being added to New Jersey's workers' compensation law.
Did it work?
New Jersey didn't recognize asbestosis as compensable until 1945, 10-year delay.
And he wrote all of this down.
In company memos, filed for reference. Also 1933, Lanza writes to a Johns Manville doctor in Waukegan, the plant where they're doing the study, tells him not to post warning signs for workers.
Why not?
Quote, because of the extraordinary legal situation.
The extraordinary legal situation being workers might sue if they knew they were being poisoned.
Exactly. And in 1936, Lanza assures Sumner Simpson that Dr. R.R. Sayers can be, quote, relied on not to disclose findings of asbestosis to the workers.
Who's Sayers?
Lanza's former colleague at the U.S. Public Health Service.
So how organized is this? A few letters or something more systematic?
Systematic. Companies, insurance providers, government agencies, all coordinating, all documenting the coordination in writing. By 1935, the American asbestos industry has a specific problem.
What kind of problem?
The British have gone public. The Merriweather and Price Report, 1930, British government study of 363 asbestos workers. 25% had asbestosis.
And 80% of workers with more than 20 years exposure
were affected. And here's the kicker. The report was published simultaneously in American industrial medical journals.
So American doctors could read it.
American doctors, regulators, workers' compensation boards. The British weren't hiding anything. In March 1932, the UK implemented the first asbestos-specific regulations in the world, required dust control, ventilation, medical examinations.
What could American companies do about a British government report?
They couldn't stop British publications from crossing the Atlantic. All they could do was control American reprints.
How?
September 25, 1935. Sumner Simpson receives a letter from A.F. Rossiter, editor and publisher of Asbestos magazine, the American trade publication, published out of Philadelphia. We covered this exchange in episode 20.
We're looking at it as a document now, as evidence in a vault.
The Rossiter letter. Quote, you may recall that we have written you on several occasions concerning the publishing of information or discussion of asbestosis. Always you have requested that for certain obvious reasons we publish nothing, and naturally your wishes have been respected.
Rossiter just states it, flat out.
Flat out, on letterhead, signed, filed under dust. Then Rossiter makes a suggestion. Maybe publish a positive article about the industry's dust reduction efforts, counter the undesirable publicity appearing in newspapers.
What does having Simpson's reply in writing add to what we already know he believed?
A document isn't testimony. It doesn't depend on anyone's memory. 6 days later, October 1st, 1935, Sumner Simpson writes to Vandiver Brown at Johns Manville. Quote, I think the less said about asbestos, the better off we are.
There it is again.
8 words, typed on Raybestos-Manhattan letterhead. Carbon copy filed in Simpson's vault, under dust.
The less said about asbestos, the better off we are.
Simpson continues, quote, the magazine Asbestos is in business to publish articles affecting the trade, and they have been very decent about not reprinting the English articles.
What does very decent tell us about the arrangement?
That the magazine knew it was being managed. Very decent is the language you use when someone cooperates willingly. 2 days later, October 3rd, Vandiver Brown replies.
And we have Brown's letter, too.
Quote, I quite agree with you that our interests are best served by having asbestosis receive the minimum publicity.
Not accurate publicity, not balanced publicity.
Minimum. Brown goes on to suggest that if they do eventually allow publication, they should use American data rather than English data.
Why?
Because American asbestos dust is, quote, considerably milder.
The most patriotic asbestos. Bless.
American asbestos, less likely to kill you. Totally baseless claim, but it's in writing. There's also a Brown letter about occupational disease legislation from this period, dated January 35 in one source, placed later in others. Exact dating on some of these documents is contested. 44 years in a vault, referenced in later correspondence without clear timestamps, the record gets murky.
And the paper trail was never meant to be read.
Which is part of why reconstructing it is a mess. What isn't contested is the content. Quote, "The strongest bulwark against future disaster for the industry is the enactment of properly drawn occupational disease legislation."
Which sounds good until you read what properly drawn means.
It would, quote, "eliminate the jury and empower a medical board to pass upon existence of disease. It would eliminate the shyster lawyer and the quack doctor, since fees would be strictly limited by law. It would permit correcting initial mistakes in awards by providing hearings to reduce or eliminate awards if claimant not disabled."
Shyster. Worth pausing on that word. The origin is disputed, but for generations it's been used as a dog whistle against Jewish lawyers. Brown puts it in a corporate memo without hesitation to describe the people who might hold him accountable.
The lawyer representing sick workers. That's the threat Brown is naming, and he puts it in writing.
So, no juries, capped fees, company-controlled medical boards, and the ability to reduce payments later.
That's the strongest bulwark, and it's in writing.
Speaking of buried records, Danziger and Dayano has spent 30 years finding the documentation companies thought they'd hidden, exposure records, internal memos, proof they knew. dandel.com.
1936. Multiple asbestos companies jointly fund research at the Saranac Laboratory for Tuberculosis in the Adirondack Mountains.
What was the condition for their funding?
The catch is in the contract. Quote, "Research had to be vetted by company officials prior to publication."
They're paying for the right to suppress.
They're institutionalizing suppression. The lab's director, Dr. Leroy Gardner, needs funding. The Great Depression has dried up nonprofit money. Industry becomes the major donor.
And Gardner goes along with it?
Initially, by 1942 to 1943, Gardner has induced malignant tumors in mice using chrysotile asbestos fibers. He's also documented 11 human lung cancer cases from Quebec asbestos miners, including 2 mesotheliomas.
What did Gardner do with those findings?
In 1943, he provides detailed results to Johns Manville Corporation. Von de Veer Brown receives the findings.
What happened when Gardner tried to publish independently?
He tries to obtain independent funding to break free from industry control. Fails. Dies in 1946 before publishing.
What did the companies do once Gardner was dead?
They hold a meeting, January 1947. They decide, quote, "There would be no publication of the research of experiments without the group's consent. Publications would not include any objectionable material."
What's objectionable?
Quote, "Any relation between asbestos and cancer." Final agreement. The reference to cancer and tumors should be deleted.
They're editing a dead man's research.
And Vandiver Brown is orchestrating it. When the dusting experiments report is prepared after Gardner's death, one company returns it at Brown's request.
What does Brown want?
Quote, "All references to cancers and tumors deleted." He feels it's unwise to have any copies of the draft report outstanding if the final report was to be different in any substantial respect.
He's destroying evidence while creating a paper trail documenting how he's doing it.
He documented his own instructions to suppress. 1941, Vandiver Brown writes to Sumner Simpson about a book review that links asbestos to pneumocanosis.
What does he say?
Brown expresses confidence that the editor of Asbestos magazine will, quote, "omit any review of the book in question." Then Brown adds this, "I felt there was considerable likelihood that a number of subscribers would dislike an article on this subject in the trade magazine of the asbestos industry. I had in mind the ostrich-like attitude which has been evidenced from time to time by members of the industry."
Wait, he's criticizing the ostrich-like attitude.
He's criticizing companies that aren't suppressing information effectively enough.
The ostrich-like attitude isn't denying danger.
It's not coordinating suppression well enough. And he writes it down. Typed, carbon copied, filed.
We need to pause because if you're listening to this and thinking about someone you've lost mesothelioma or you're dealing with a diagnosis right now, I'm sorry. This history is infuriating. It's also why firms like Danziger and Dayano exist. Paul Danziger has spent over 30 years holding asbestos companies accountable. His team includes people like Dave Foster, who lost his own father to asbestos lung cancer and now serves as executive director of patient advocacy with 18 years of experience. Anna Jackson, director of patient support, lost her husband to cancer. They know what families are going through. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma or an asbestos-related disease, Danziger and Dayano offers free consultations, no upfront costs. They've recovered nearly $2 billion for asbestos victims. Visit dandell.com or call the number in the show notes.
1942 or 1943, a meeting takes place between Johns Manville executives and officials from UNARCO, Union Asbestos and Rubber Company, a newer competitor.
Who was in the room?
We know from testimony. April 25, 1984, Federal Court. Johns Manville Corporation versus the United States of America. Charles Romer, an UNARCO employee who was present, testifies 40 years later. Present, Lewis Brown, Johns Manville's president, Vandiver Brown, the company's attorney and vice president.
Same last name, different men?
Not brothers, despite what some sources claim. And according to Romer, Vandiver Brown criticized UNARCO's management for being, quote, a bunch of fools for notifying employees who had asbestosis.
UNARCO was telling sick workers about their diagnoses,
Which Johns Manville saw as stupidity. And Romer testified, I'll never forget. I turned to Mr. Brown and I said, Mr. Brown, do you mean to tell me you would let them work until they dropped dead?
And we know what he said.
He said, yes. We save a lot of money that way.
We save a lot of money that way.
A decade of correspondence, dozens of memos, scientific studies, lobbying strategies, and the oral admission, the thing Vandiver Brown said in a room, thinking it would never be repeated, distills it all.
Let them work until they drop dead.
Because it saves money. Same year, 1943, Dr. Gardner provides his detailed cancer findings to Johns Manville. Asbestos causes tumors in mice, 11 human lung cancer cases, including 2 mesotheliomas from asbestos workers.
They had proof asbestos caused cancer in 1943.
They had proof, they buried it, and they documented the burial.
And the suppression continues after 1943.
1949, just outside our episode scope, but it shows the escalation. Dr. Kenneth Smith, a local physician working with Johns Manville, sends a memo to corporate headquarters. 7 mill workers have chest x-rays showing early asbestosis.
What's his recommendation?
Quote, as long as the man is not disabled, it is felt that he should not be told of his condition so that he can live and work in peace, and the company can benefit by his many years of experience.
And 3 years later, Smith recommends warning labels on the product itself.
1952, Smith is now medical director of all Johns Manville companies. He recommends warning labels on asbestos products. Management rejects it. Their reasoning, as Smith later described it in a 1976 deposition, a business decision. Warning labels would cut into sales.
Don't tell the workers, don't label the product, promote the man who said both.
They hire Smith as medical director. They're institutionalizing it. May 5, 1927, Sumner Simpson co-founds the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut.
8 years before the less said about asbestos letter.
Same man, one of 3 founding patrons, expanding educational access, building something meant to serve the community for generations.
How do you hold both?
I don't know. Simpson genuinely believed in spreading knowledge. He funded a university. But when it came to knowledge that threatened profits, knowledge that could save workers' lives, he coordinated suppression. He did good things. He also did this. And the vault, the 6,000 documents he preserved, testament to both. The meticulous record-keeping of a businessman who took his work seriously, including the work of hiding the truth.
He filed it under dust.
The most accurate filing label in corporate history. He died in 1953, 79 years old. The vault passed to his son. For 24 more years, 1953 to 1977, those documents sat there while workers kept getting sick, kept dying, kept being told nothing. Perfectly preserved.
They thought no one would ever read it.
For 44 years, they were right. So let's recap Arc 5. The conspiracy begins.
Episode 20.
Episode 20. The less said about asbestos, the better off we are, becomes the coordinating principle.
Episode 21.
Episode 21. The Asbestos Textile Institute, 1936 to 1940. The industry creates a trade association specifically to coordinate suppression. Institutionalized conspiracy.
Episode 22.
Episode 22. The Saranac Cover-Up, 1936 to 1947. Dr. Leroy Gardner discovers that asbestos causes cancer. After Gardner dies in 1946, companies meet and agree to delete all references to cancer from any publications. Vandiver Brown orchestrates it.
Episode 23.
Episode 23. The Human Experiments, 1943 to 1964. The cancer findings from the 1940s, mice studies, human case reports, all systematically suppressed. The industry knows asbestos is carcinogenic and hides it for 2 decades.
And episode 24.
Episode 24. The Paper Trail. We just showed you the evidence, the actual letters, the memos, the documented coordination. They wrote it all down.
What episodes 20 through 23 documented, episode 24 proves it.
It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't speculation. It was conspiracy, conscious, coordinated, and documented by the conspirators themselves.
We're sponsored by Danziger and Dayano. I want to tell you about Yvette Abrego. Her father was a welder who breathed asbestos daily at work, came home with fibers on his clothes, on his hands. For nearly 20 years, Yvette has worked as a client advocate, helping working families understand what happened to the people they loved. She knows the story. It's her story, too. If you're dealing with a mesothelioma diagnosis, yours or a family member's, you can talk to someone who understands both sides of it. Free consultation, no upfront costs. Danziger and Dayano only gets paid if you do. Over 30 years, nearly $2 billion recovered. dandel.com or call the number in the show notes. So, what happens next?
Next is something a little different. Before we start Arc 6, we're releasing a special episode, Magic Mineral at War.
Why a special before the arc?
Because what's coming in the war years is so large, the scale of it, that we want to give you the full panorama before we start pulling it apart story by story. The shipyards, Navy contracts, millions of workers exposed in a compressed window of time. Arc 5 ends with the paper trail proving what the industry knew. The special shows you what they walked into knowing it.
World War II.
World War II, the largest asbestos exposure event in human history. And the industry we just documented, the one with 6,000 documents in a vault under dust, they're about to receive the biggest contracts in American history. Arc 6 follows. But first, the full picture of what that conspiracy made possible.
Thanks for listening.
This has been episode 24 of Asbestos, a conspiracy 4,500 years in the making. Shyster? 1935. He puts a slur in a damn business memo.
And I want to flag something about that word because people use it all the time without thinking about what it's carrying. The origin is actually disputed. The best evidence traces it to German for worthless person, not to Shylock. Shylock is Shakespeare's Jewish moneylender in The Merchant of Venice, a character who's been used for 400 years to reinforce the stereotype of the scheming, greedy Jew. That connection to shyster turns out to be a false etymology, but the fact that people invented it and believed it tells you something about the associations already in place. By 1935, the word was loaded. Some people hear it as a dog whistle. Some people don't realize it. Brown doesn't clarify which he is. He just writes it in a memo and files it under dust.
And that ambiguity is almost worse.
Because you can't pin it. He gets to claim it's just slang. He's not worried about the workers. He's worried about the lawyers. The lawyers are the threat.
The workers are already handled. They're breathing dust and being told nothing.
And we've talked about who those workers were. Raybestos, Johns Manville, disproportionately black workers, immigrant workers, the people with the fewest options and the least ability to push back. Brown has a slur ready for the lawyers who might hold him accountable. For the workers themselves, he doesn't need one. He's just got silence.
The slur is for the people who scare him. The silence is for the people he's already decided don't count.
That's the whole arc, filed under dust.
Next week, The Special. Magic Mineral at War.
I'm looking forward to that one, for once.
Me too. We started working on that last year.
See you next week.